So this is our last session. I'll do a quick recap of what we have discussed till now before we move to the last session. Basically, our concern was that the nature of life is that we will be hurt by others. So when someone hurts us, at that time, how do we view that person? What is our perception of that person? What is our understanding of God's response, of God's role in that? And then, what is our response to that? That's what we are discussing. So, in terms of our perception of the other person, we need to evaluate whether that wrong was intentional, circumstantial, or conditional. With respect to God's role, we understand that without God's will, nothing happens. But that doesn't mean that whatever happened, that's what God wanted to happen to us. There is some plan of the Lord over there, and we need to find out that plan ourselves. So, this session, I'll take it three broad parts. First, we'll talk about what God's plan means. That's the first part. The second, I'll talk about what surrender means. Especially, I'll talk about surrender and intelligence. How the two go together. And then last part we'll talk about is a broad two-step approach to finding our part in God's plan. So, the idea is, say I am facing some suffering in my life, and there is some plan of God over here. Now, that I should suffer in that particular way, that may or may not be God's plan. We don't know that. But if you have to understand what is God's plan, so there's a clear understanding. Sometimes some people have the idea that God's plan is like one narrow line, one thin line, one thing wrong, and if you go off that line, then we are off the Lord's plan. However, a more holistic understanding is God's plan is like a broad direction. What is the difference between these two understandings? Let's consider that, say, the Lord is Pitamasya Jagato Mata Dhata Pitama. He is the supreme parent. When I travel across the world, I meet devotees, especially, say, devotee parents in the Western world are often concerned about their children, whether they learn the proper values or not. And sometimes they say that our children don't listen to us, they don't follow us. And that causes a lot of distress. They have headaches, heartaches. So sometimes I just ask that, is your main concern that your child is not listening to you, not obeying you? I said, yes. And would you like it if you could replace your child with a perfectly obedient robot who looked just like your child? Would the parent want that? Oh, some parents say that, I don't mind having extra robot, but not at the cost of my child. Why? Because there is a reciprocation of love. There is a loving relationship that wouldn't be possible if if the other entity is just a robot. So if we don't want to reduce our children, we want our children to obey us, but we don't want to reduce them to a robot in the name of obedience. So why would God want that? So when we say that there is a plan of the Lord for us and we have to follow His plan, That does not mean that when we harmonize with God's plan, that we have to give up our free will. It is rather when we want our children to listen to us, it's not that we want to take away their free will. Rather, we want them to learn to use their free will constructively, wisely, intelligently. And that's what God also wants for us. So broadly speaking, God's plans for us is to bring out our best. So that means there are self-destructive desires within us. There's lust, anger, greed. There are selfish desires within us. So we could say the selfish side within us should decrease. The service side within us, the side which wants to contribute, the side which wants to do something good, that should increase, broadly speaking. So if we consider the spiritual world in which, say, the gopis serve Krishna. Now they all cook food for Krishna, for example. Now it is not that Krishna every day sends a recipe. Today I want to cook this. No, the gopis know broadly what Krishna likes. The gopis, they know what all they can cook. And they cook accordingly. And Krishna is pleased. So it's like somebody says, surprise me, what would you like to do? So Krishna doesn't take away the individuality of the gopis. Rather, their individuality is purified and perfected in their service to Krishna. So doing God's plan, it's not something terribly mysterious. It's not that Krishna is some kind of sadist who says that if you don't do my plan, then you are doomed. And what is my plan? You don't have the right to know. You are not pure enough to know. It's not like that. It is, broadly speaking, we could say, in any situation that we are in. Krishna says, he is the well-wisher of everyone. Suhridam sarva bhutanam, he says, in 5:29. And then, Krishna says that the characteristics of devotees, he talks about in 12:13 is, Adveshta sarva bhutana maitraha karunayevacha. So devotee is also a well-wisher of everyone. Now if we consider what does the well-wisher want to do, whatever the things are, the well-wisher wants to make things better for us. So if we are in some pain, the well-wisher may get some medication. If we are feeling emotional pain, they may speak some consoling, encouraging words. So broadly speaking, the principle, when you say what is God's plan for us in any situation, in whatever situation we are in, we can do certain things which will make the situation worse, or we can do certain things which will make the situation better. So if God is our well-wisher, then God wants us to do the things which will make things better, to make the choices that will make things better for us. Now things better could be externally better, internally better, that will vary. But so we could say God's plan in that sense is broadly in harmony with whatever makes things better. Now there could be different things which could be done to make things better. And of course sometimes our ideas of what might make things better may not be very well informed. And they may end up making things worse also. So that all that caveat is there. That sometimes the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So good intentions alone are not a substitute for good intelligence. I may say, who wants to make things worse? Well, there are some people who, they don't want to make things worse for themselves, they want to make things worse for others. But sometimes some people are masochists, they like to inflict pain on themselves also. But either way, the point is that whatever makes things better means there is the intention and there is the intelligence. So sometimes somebody falls sick, and maybe the sickness is going on for a long time, it's not getting cured, and they become bitter, they become grouchy, they start criticizing and complaining, and they start making the lives of their caregivers miserable. So they are sick, and that's sad. They are sick, but many times they are sick and they make their caregivers sick of them. Now, that is not necessary to do. That's something that can be avoided. So, broadly speaking, we can say that suffering comes upon everyone in life. And we can even say that much of the suffering that comes upon us feels unfair to us. Now, we could go into past life karma and say that nothing is unfair. But from this life's perspective, it does seem unfair. And especially when, say, something good is happening to someone else, and if this person doesn't deserve good, and something bad is happening to me. I was at one place in New Zealand, and one person was telling me that he's constantly complaining about another person. So then I said, Prabhu, with all due respect, whenever somebody says with all due respect, what is going to follow is not going to be very respectful. So, I said, with all due respect, it sounds as if you are jealous of this person. I said, no, of course I'm not jealous. I'm just extremely unhappy that good things are happening to him and they're not happening to me. And then he spoke that in Mokpelu, right? That's actually jealousy. He never identified that emotion. But the point is that many times in our life, it does feel as if what we are going through is unfair. We are suffering and it's unfair. And we could say there are two distinct trajectories we can go in. One is we can go towards vengeance. We say everybody needs role models in life. Everybody needs heroes that they can emulate. But actually, most people want villains more than heroes. Villains to blame for what is wrong in my life. We can have a hero. By following that hero, maybe I can become better. Of course, we want a hero who will save us. But a hero, if you consider a role model, then okay, in this situation I can deal with this and move forward. But many of us, we want to find someone to blame and take vengeance against that person. It could be anything. It could be some relative, it could be some family member, it could be some friend, it could be some colleague, it could be some politician, it could be this, it could be that. Now, is it true that those people have hurt us? It's quite likely. But when we focus on vengeance, that vengeance is revengefulness. We have to find out someone whom I have to hurt back to become free or to just get even. Now, the problem with vengeance is that it becomes a mentality. So even if I succeed, somebody has really hurt me and I succeed in hurting them back afterwards. But once that becomes a mentality, afterward, even if I have punished that person, my mind will start looking for someone else to blame for the problems that are there in my life. Now, vengeance may make for thrilling action movies, but in real life, it just becomes a mentality. And from there, a person goes towards malevolence. So vengeance is specific. Malevolence means the benevolence is to desire good for others. Malevolence is to desire harm for others. So this becomes generalized. Now we see sometimes some people, they're just so bitter in their lives. We start talking with them and the initial courtesies are over, if a little bit the bond seems to be established, and then it's almost like the poison starts spouting out from them. This person like this and that person like that person like that. And we feel that I just don't want to be with such bitterness. And it's true, for our own emotional health, it's good not to be too long with bitter people. But think about them. They are living with that bitterness constantly. How much will it be affecting them? And this is bad enough when it is directed towards others. But vengeance can even be directed towards oneself. Where I am such a fool, I am such a terrible person, I am a loser, I am useless, I am worthless. And when that sort of thought keeps going on in our mind again and again and again, this vengeful mentality, when it is directed outward, it leads to aggression. When it goes inward, it leads to depression. Because what happens is, I am beating myself up. Oh, I lost this opportunity and I did not do this and I did not do that, and what a terrible person I am. And this is a dark path to go down. Now, there is definitely taking responsibility that if I have made some mistakes, I have to deal with that. And if somebody has wronged me in a particular way, we also have to deal with that. But when that becomes a mentality, that becomes the default way we start thinking, that is quite toxic. So basically, this is the trajectory when somebody starts going down. We all have heard this, hurt people. And it just keeps going on a dark downward trajectory. Somebody is hurt and they hurt others. And then when that person hurts them back, it just goes on. It becomes like a parampara of mutual hurting each other. Unfortunately, it's a tradition of abuse. So certainly we can say that going down this trajectory is not God's plan for us. So we are trying to understand what is God's plan. That if you understand God's plan is that we make things better. So how do we make things better? So the first step would be intelligence. You don't want to go on this trajectory. Intelligence means we try to understand, what exactly is the issue. We talked about various causes for a problem. Which is the most constructive way of looking at this particular problem? And once I look at that, then after that, then we turn towards practicals. But I'll talk about this intelligence in terms of God's plan, intelligence next step. But intelligence is important. Then after that, there is transcendence. Transcendence means that with our intelligence, we learn to rise above the situation. And from that higher perspective, we are able to find out how best to deal with the situation. So, we all may be victimized, but we don't have to define ourselves as victims. We may be cheated, but that doesn't make us gullible fools if we learn for it. So by transcendence, basically, we rise above the situations, rise above the suffering, rise above the situation. Now this doesn't mean the suffering stays as it is. We'll see. In transcendence, we'll find a right way to deal with it. So now, what is the intelligence? Okay, what is the constructive causal framework for looking at this? How can I deal with it? So let's move forward. So the first point, God's plan for us is broadly, we make things better. Not that we become bitter and we make things worse. So we don't have to necessarily depend on some mystical influence that some guru will touch their hand on my head and suddenly everything will become clear for me. Or Krishna will come in my dream and tell me this is what I want you to do. No, such things can happen for some people. But Krishna does not set that example in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna takes Arjuna through a process of philosophical analysis for the purpose of practical guidance. What he should do. So now the second point is that with respect to when we say, okay, there is God's plan for me, and we should surrender. We should play our part in God's plan. So what is the role, what is the relationship between surrender and intelligence? Some people say, oh, just surrender to God. Like when we start talking about bhakti especially, people feel, oh, bhakti means just, wow, you should feel some emotion. Why do we need all this philosophy? Why do we need all this analysis? Well, bhakti is bhava, but Krishna says, buddha bhava samanvitaha. Buddha is intelligence, bhava is emotion. So devotion, bhakti is a combination of reason and emotion both. In 10.8 Krishna uses the word, he's talking about enlightened people, buddha bhava samanvitaha. So the person has reason as well as emotion. Both of them are used in Krishna's service. So, with respect to our intelligence, if we consider God's will, God's will can be happening to us, but God's will is also meant to happen through us. There are two distinct modes of harmonizing with God's will. Say for example, when we talk about surrender, what is the standard image of somebody who is surrendered? The classic image of a devotee who is surrendered in trouble? Draupadi. So Draupadi, she raises her hands in utter dependence on the Lord. My dear Lord, I surrender to you. Now, that is one image definitely. So whatever is happening, I accept it. So this was also the mood in which Jesus, for example, said, with just around the time of the Last Supper, he said, O Lord, let thy will be done. So your will is happening, I accept it. Now, at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna, surrender. Sarvadharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja. And Arjuna says, yes, I will surrender. In 1863, Arjuna responds to Krishna in 1876. And he says, Karishye vachanam tava. So now, does Arjuna surrender by raising his hands up? Arjuna surrenders by raising his bow up. Why? Because there, his surrender is, Krishna wants him to do something. And their surrender is not so much accepting God's will as it is happening to us. That surrender is accepting the responsibility to do God's will. That I am supposed to be an instrument for you. So here we have another example of surrender as Arjuna. So both are forms of surrender. You could put it another way is that if I am here, now God is here and the world is here. Now certain things are happening to me and I accept it. This could be God's will. Okay? But certain things are meant to happen through me and that is also God's will. So God's will, sometimes it is about accepting what is happening. So when Draupadi, she came to a place where there was nothing she could do. She just, okay, there's nothing I can do about it at this point. So she just accepted God's will. So, but Arjuna, there was definitely something he could do. And at that time, he took the responsibility for that. So now, you may have noticed I need crutches for walking. So when I was around 1, I got polio. Basically, polio is more or less a disease that has been eliminated by various things, including the vaccines, polio shots. But so when I was living in a small town in Maharashtra in India, and my parents took me to the hospital over there to get the vaccine shot. But somehow that was a very underdeveloped place, and the fridge in which the doctor had kept the vaccines, that fridge power supply had gone off the previous night. And so the percentage of the polio germs in the vaccine became excessive. So the vaccine, instead of preventing the polio, ended up giving me polio. So then when it happened, I had a relative in America, he's my maternal uncle. When he talked with my father, he said, let's sue the doctor. So my father, he's a very peaceful person. His favorite verse in the Bhagavad Gita is Sita Pragya, stay equipoised. He said, in India, lodging a court case is so complicated. Just probably will die before the court case even comes for hearing. Anyway, now this has happened, what can we do? So, we accepted it. Now, I have a friend in Florida. He had a daughter, and his daughter, she was in NICU, natal ICU, and the doctors, the medical staff made some big mistake, and she was born with cerebral palsy and a lot of other complications. So then at that time she survived, but she is going to need lifelong care. So then he asked, both of us have the same guru. So he asked our guru, should I accept this as that I got this daughter? Should I accept it as my karma and just live with it? Or should I do a case against the hospital? So our Guru Maharaj said, our spiritual master said that, that what has happened you can't change it. But at the same time, she's your daughter and you have to take care of her. So if you can get some assistance in taking care of her, and if you get the hospital to take responsibility for it, then go ahead with it. You are not suing the hospital to take revenge against them. You are suing the hospital so that you can get the support that you will need for doing your duty of taking care of your daughter. So he did that, and because it was clearly not a case of medical malpractice, but definitely medical negligence. So the hospital itself settled out of court, and he's got a decent support, nothing financial support. But now, of course, his daughter is still sick, but he got that. So now it is his devotion. He's definitely a devotee, but devotee does not necessarily mean you accept things passively. So sometimes when something bad happens, we accept it. Sometimes we do something to fix it. So God's will, how exactly it will work in different situations, that requires our use of our intelligence. So surrender is not passivity. Oh, this has happened, this is God's will, let me accept it. Surrender means that I have also the responsibility to God, do God's will. I have a duty, I have a responsibility, I want to be of some service. And if some circumstance, some situation is preventing me, is obstructing me in doing that service, then how can I deal with that situation? So, this is the second part. That God's will, God's plan is not a thin one line, but it's a broad direction. And to pursue that direction, sometimes we may accept what has happened, sometimes we may accept the responsibility to fix what has happened. Both can be God's will. Now that brings us to the last part. Okay, so how do I try to figure out what is God's will? What should I be doing which will make me a part of the Lord's plan, which will keep me in harmony with the higher plan? So I'll talk about 2 steps, or rather it is like, first is transcending, and then after transcending there is tackling. We transcend the problem first and then we tackle the problem. And in tackling, I'll talk about 3 T's, what all could be done in tackling. But let's look first at what transcending means. Throughout this course, if you forget everything else, if you just remember this one image, you will have gained something significant from the course. See, what does spiritual growth, what does spiritual advancement mean? So normally for us, the world is big and God is small. That means, oh, this person said this to me and this happened to me and I'm losing this job and this is happening. So the events of the world, they take occupy a huge space in our mind. And God is there somewhere in the background in some corner. For many people, because the world is so big for them, God often becomes almost irrelevant also. When I was introduced to Bhakti, I tried to share it with some of my relatives. So my uncle, he said, yeah, of course I believe in God. He's happy there, I'm happy here. So the idea is, when God is so small, it's almost as if He's irrelevant. But as we grow spiritually, what happens is, the world becomes small and God becomes big for us. Now when we say becomes, what do I mean by that? Actually, God is always the biggest reality. But for us, in terms of what matters to us, for us in terms of what occupies greater mental space and weight inside us, God becomes bigger. So that means in the world there will be ups and downs. Sometimes we'll be honored, sometimes we'll be dishonored. But for us, maintaining our connection with God, remembering God and staying in harmony with Him, that will be much more important. And in that sense, when God becomes bigger for us, then the problems of this world, they don't threaten us so much. The problem may still be there, but they are not that overwhelming for us. So basically, if you consider that, so if there is a huge skyscraper building kind of thing, and we are a tiny being at the bottom of it, the building can seem very huge. Maybe it's a wall, see. It's a building, and then we have to cross that wall. How will you cross it? But if we have been airlifted, say if we are in a helicopter above, now the wall is still there, but it appears not so big. Here it appears huge. So basically, when God becomes bigger for us, what happens is we rise above the problems. So transcending means basically that God becomes bigger for us. That now, what does this mean? As an example, it may seem very nice, but in terms of okay, I had to face some issues. What does it mean? So many of us remember this verse 15.7. Krishna says, "Mamaivamsho jiva loke," that we are parts of Krishna. Sanatana. We are always parts of Krishna. Now this is a philosophical truth, but it also has a psychological implication. If we are always parts of Krishna, that means we always have parts in Krishna's plan. Say if somebody is selected as a part of the, say, English cricket team, then if they are a part of the team, that means they will have a part in the team, isn't it? Okay, you are opening batsman, you are a fast bowler, you are a medium pacer, you are a spin bowler, you are a wicket keeper. So we are always a part of Krishna's team. And Krishna says Sanatana. No matter what mistakes we have done, we may have misused our free will, somebody else may have subjected us to evil, but through it all, we are never thrown out of Krishna's team. We are always parts of Krishna. We always have parts in Krishna's plan. So yes, this problem may be huge and this problem has to be dealt with. But this problem may have come because of this person, this problem may come because of my own foolishness, whatever be the reason. We are never out of Krishna's plan. So transcending means gaining that perspective, that assurance that there is a part for me. Krishna's plan is going on, and there is an ongoing part for me in that plan. So this is a very profoundly reassuring conviction. And when we do our sadhana, say when we chant the holy names, when we come into the temple and take darshan of the deities, these can very easily become rituals. But if we do these seriously, at least for a few moments during our prayer, during our meditation, during our chanting, for a few moments we bring ourselves into that awareness that Krishna is the bigger reality. That Krishna is here with us, within us. So if even for a few moments every day, we are reminded that Krishna is the bigger reality, some trace of that remembrance will stay with us. And then the world's ups and downs, especially the downs, will not knock us down so much. So this is that we always have parts in Krishna's plan. I'll give a last example to illustrate this. We all know about the GPS. What is GPS?
Positioning system.
Yes. You can also call it as God's positioning system. So now, say if we are driving and say GPS tells us turn right, and say somebody else tells us okay turn left, and we go left for whatever reason. Sometimes we all ourselves make a mistake or somebody else misleads us, we go left. Now what does the GPS do at that time? Reroutes. Does GPS say you didn't obey me, get lost? No, it never does that. So Krishna is like that GPS. That we may take a wrong turn, but the GPS has got a whole territory routed properly. So even if you have taken a wrong turn, you can still come back on the right path. Now this does not mean that the wrong turns don't matter. Every wrong turn will mean it will take us more time to get to destination, it may require more fuel, the effort may be more. So it's not that the wrong turns are inconsequential. They do matter. But they are not fatal. So we are never thrown out of God's plan. No matter whether we have done something wrong, others have done something wrong. So that is our hope. So when we are practicing bhakti, when we are chanting the holy names, we are trying to bring ourselves into the presence of Krishna. This is the perspective that we need first of all. That Krishna is with me, Krishna's plan is still working in my life. That's transcending. Now after transcending, then now we may say, okay, alright, Krishna is with me, Krishna's plan is still working. But still, I have to deal with the situation. So how am I going to deal with the situation? That's where it comes to tackling. Now broadly with respect to tackling, there are three ways of tackling the situation. One is tolerating, the other is transforming, the third is transferring. Transferring ourselves to some other situation. So let's look at the Pandavas. Initially when Bhima was poisoned, at that time Bhima survived, and when he came to know what had happened, he was enraged. He said, I'll go and teach that Duryodhana lesson. So Yudhishthira said, let's not do that right now. He said, we are new over here, they just come from the forest, we don't want to break our family apart. Maybe Duryodhana is feeling insecure, maybe he's feeling a bit envious. No, let's keep a low profile, let's not provoke him. We'll be alert, but let's not provoke things. Maybe this is his insecurity, his envy will gradually go away. So they tolerated. Now, unfortunately, that didn't lead to anything positive. He only kept becoming worse. Then, when the attempt was made to burn them alive in the forest, in the house of black, so the Pandavas, they again could have gone back to the kingdom and decided to confront. But they didn't do that. Because at this point, they, so after poisoning, they just decided to tolerate it. Now here, after the burning, they decided to just move away from the situation. They said that this was a big scheme. Who all are in this scheme? Dhritarashtra definitely has to be in, otherwise it can't happen. But they said that going back will only make things worse only. So they kept a low profile till eventually Arjuna won the hand of Draupadi. Now the Pandavas were no longer just orphan young kids. Of course they had a mother, but not having a father was like being an orphan in those times. So they were not just helpless kids. Now they were the sons-in-law of a very powerful rival kingdom. Right? So certainly Drupada would want his daughter to live in the prosperity that behooved her. And so Dhritarashtra reluctantly called the Pandavas back and gave them one half of the kingdom. Now again, let's say a parent has two companies, let's say let's divide it fairly, I'll give one company to children. But one company is flourishing and the other is on the verge of bankruptcy. And if two companies are divided, it's utterly unfair. But the Pandavas accepted it. They went to Khandava and they converted that into a flourishing kingdom. So again they transferred themselves. Let's go away from here. Eventually, even after Draupadi was dishonored, the Pandavas, they were angry. They took furious vows. But they still were ready to settle peacefully. That's why the multiple rounds of peace negotiations happened. Krishna's was the final. But when they tried to arrest even Krishna, then they decided that this person is just not ready to go. So then transformed the situation. They fought the Kurukshetra war. So in the service of the Lord, there are different ways in which we may act. So when Srila Prabhupada was in India, for example, he was trying his best to share Krishna Bhakti. And it was just not working. For 20, 30, 35 years he was trying in India. But somehow at that time, India had just got political independence and Indians were very infatuated with the West. And their idea was that, oh, everything Western is great, Indians is okay. They're not really very interested in that. So now, Prabhupada said, okay, I'm trying, nothing is working, let me just give up. Prabhupada didn't do that. He said, what did he do? He went from there all the way to America. That's interesting if you look at what Prabhupada was thinking. He says, Indians are infatuated with the West, especially Indians are infatuated with the white skin and what these people do. So now, and because of that, they are not valuing Indian spirituality. So now if you consider the Indians being infatuated with the white skin, that is Maya, isn't it? That is illusion. But Prabhupada was using one form of Maya to counter another form of Maya. So, okay, you are infatuated with the white skin, I'll try to go to the West. If Western people start practicing bhakti, and you will see that, and then you will start taking your own legacy more seriously. So Prabhupada went all the way from India to America. Was always surrendered, but was transferred. Now, when he did come to America, initially he was staying at the house of Sally and Gopal Agarwal. And their father had asked them to sponsor and they had sponsored, but they had no interest in spirituality per se, in Krishna consciousness. For them, Swamiji was just an obligation. And when he was staying there, and they used to eat meat, and Prabhupada was a person who had never even drunk tea or coffee. He lived very purely throughout his life. And now he was keeping the bhoga which he would offer to Krishna in the same fridge where there was meat, even beef there. Now, this is the hostess, Sally Agarwal. She had some sense that Swamiji does not eat meat. She was a little apologetic. She says, Swamiji, we have only one fridge. What can we do about this? And Prabhupada said, think nothing about it. So, Prabhupada was not sending them on a guilt trip. Prabhupada was not making a big hue and cry about it. Prabhupada accepted that situation. Why? Okay, he tolerated it. Because he knew that this is not the place where he is going to be permanently. He's here for the time being, so tolerate it. So, then later on Prabhupada came back to India in 1970s, and then he got the land in Juhu and he wanted to build a temple there. But then the person who sold him the land, that person was a influential person, but he was also a deceptive person. So he wanted to take the money and not give the land also. And that time Prabhupada said, if he wants to steal Krishna's land, he will have to go over my dead body. And Prabhupada fought at that point. And now there's a magnificent temple in Juhu. So Prabhupada was transforming over there. So the idea is that when we are trying to serve Krishna, sometimes we live in that situation and we move onwards, just live with it. Sometimes we change the situation, sometimes we may go to a different situation entirely. All three are valid approaches. However, we need to have it clear that my focus is to serve Krishna. And why am I tolerating? Okay, this person is a disagreeable person, but while being here, I can do this valuable service. So we may tolerate so that we can do some service. So if now each of these, if without transcending, that means without understanding that Krishna is a higher reality and Krishna has a plan for my life. Without transcending, if we are tackling, then what will happen is, we won't be tolerating, we will simply be resenting. Why is this person like this? Why can I not do anything about it? So when we are resenting, what is going to happen is, sooner or later that resentment is going to burst. Either it will burst out like a volcano and hurt others, or it will just be like toxic emotions inside us and it will hurt us. So it's very important to know what tolerance means. Tolerance has two aspects to it. One is keep small things small. The second is actually even more important. Keep big things big. And these two are not just two distinct things, they are very much related. The more we can keep small things small, the more we can keep big things big. And the more we keep big things big, the more we can keep small things small. But if in the name of tolerating, we are not able to do any big thing at all, then that tolerating will be resenting. So Krishna tells Arjuna, Tam Sitiksha Bharat. In the Bhagavad Gita it says tolerate. But when he says tolerate, what does he mean by that? He is not implying that, oh, the Kauravas have performed so many atrocities towards you, just tolerate that and live with it. He is telling that you have this duty of fighting the war. And you have to fight against Bhishma and Drona, that is difficult. But this is what your duty is calling you to do. Even if it is difficult, tolerate the difficulty and do the duty. So, Arjuna was making, I have to fight against Bhishma and Drona, that is the big thing. She said, no, that is a small thing related to this. The big thing is, you have to be a part of my plan in establishing dharma, in establishing the rule of virtue in the world. So, we don't want to be resenting. If we are not able to move toward Krishna through a situation, then that tolerating will simply be repressing or suppressing ourselves and will explode. Similarly, without tolerating, without transcending first, if we are transforming the situation, we will essentially not be transforming, we will be retaliating. You did this to me, I do this to you. So in the name of transforming, You are the problem and you have to suffer because you are the problem. And this is not a healthy attitude. It's significant that Krishna tells Arjuna to fight the war. But still in 1155, and that's just one of the places, many places he says, Bhagavita, Nirvairaha sarvabhuteshu. Have no enmity towards anyone. When the Pandavas fought the war, it was to establish dharma, to bring about justice. It was not to take revenge. So when you are transforming, it is, as he says, Nirvairaha, have no enmity. That's why this transcending is very important. Krishna says, Mam anusmara yudhyacha. Remember me and then fight. That first remembering me means understand that there is a higher plan to my life. And once I understand the higher plan, then let me prayerfully see how can I move ahead. And similarly, when we are talking about tackling, transferring, if we have not actually dealt with, if you're not really connected with Krishna, then transferring will just be running away. Oh, this situation is very difficult, I'm going to go away from here. But then every situation in life will have some difficulty. How long are we going to keep running away? So if we are transferring ourselves from a situation, it is not just because this situation is troublesome. It is because this situation is preventing me from doing my dharma. This situation is preventing me from moving toward Krishna, from doing my seva. But then I don't want to get involved in combating with that situation. So I just want to move out. But we are not running away, we are moving to a different lane where we can move towards Krishna. So the idea is that whichever way we do, I said Krishna's will is like a expressway. It's like a broad way. Now Krishna's will is like if it's a broad way. Now sometimes there might be a very narrow lane. The lane is very narrow and slow. But still we are moving forward. So if we are going on this lane, we may say we will tolerate. Sometimes maybe we are going along a lane and there is complete chaos and disorder. And we may decide that, okay, we have to establish some order over here. So everybody is honking, everybody is cutting each other. Say, okay, no, we have to create some system, we have to have some order over here. So we transform so that we can keep moving forward on that lane. But sometimes we may decide, okay, this lane is too messy. It's too messy to stay, too messy to change. Then we might decide, okay, I want to go to a different lane. So this is transferring. So in all of these, our focus is, how can I move towards Krishna? How can I do things? What can I do in a mood of service that will make things better? So if we have this attitude, then we will find that through all situations, we will keep moving towards Krishna. Now, this is a big philosophical subject, but I'll make one last point about these three ways of dealing with things. Krishna in 1814 in the Bhagavad Gita talks about the 5 factors of action. Adhishthana tatha karta karanam cha prutak vidha vividhasya prutak cheshta daivam chaivatra panchamam. So he says that there are broadly, when we do an action, for the action to get to the result, there are 5 distinct factors. Now if you don't understand all these factors, don't worry too much about it. But I'm just giving this 3 options that I talked about. I gave some examples from Shastra, but I also give some philosophical understanding of how these factors work. So Krishna says, if we consider that, say, let's consider this is a mountain, it's another mountain, in between there is a valley. So here is the action and here is the result. So Krishna says this bridge has This bridge has 5 planks to it. These 5 factors, when they work together, then we get to the result. So what are the 5 factors? First is the karta. Karta is the soul. Second is adhishthānam tatha karta, karanam cha prutak vidha, vividhāsya prutak cheshta, daivam chaivatra panchamam. So the second he says, let's move from inward towards outward. So this is the adhishthan. Adhishthan is the place. That where is it that we are doing? Then the third is the karanam. Karanam refers to the senses. Specifically, it refers to the skills that the senses have. If, for example, somebody is a good singer, in one sense, their voice is special, their throat is special. If you look at biologically, it is not necessary that their throat is going to be differently structured. The talent is a subtle thing, the senses. Then there is cheshta. Cheshta is endeavor. And last is daiva. Daiva is destiny. So he says there are these three factors involved. So 5 factors involved in the translation of action to result. So let's look at an example to illustrate this. Say if somebody is going to do gardening. Now, in gardening, what do we need? We need the place. We need the soil to be fertile. Then we need the seeds. We need the seeds to be potent. And then we need the gardening itself to be effective. Okay, when you're gardening, you have to water at the right time, in the right quantity. Don't put too much water, don't put too little water. If you do all these 3 things, then the crops will grow. Now, of course, beyond that, you can say sometimes a storm might come, sometimes the thieves might come, an earthquake might come, but then Daiva is there. So, among these 3, say the Karta is the soul, that is fixed, we are who we are. Daiva, destiny is fixed, that is from our past lives, we can't change it. But these 3 intermediate things, the place where we are working, the skills that we have, and the endeavor that we are putting in. Those 3 can be changed. So, when we are working, so if we are not getting success, or say if we are facing a problem, say if we are working and our work is not being recognized, no, if we are trying to be good with a person, but that person is constantly treating us bad. So, broadly speaking, we can say that there could be 3 reasons for this. Corresponding to these 3 factors, it is that if the place, the skills, and the endeavor. So, it could be that we are just at an inhospitable place. If I am at an inhospitable place, then what do? We need to say, suppose somebody is in America and maybe 20, 30 years in America, before 20 years ago, and they were very talented in cricket. Or 30 years ago, somebody in India is very talented in baseball. Now nobody knows what baseball is in India. When I started going to America in 2014, I often give cricket examples. So the devotees in America said, don't give cricket examples here. I said, why? He said, for Americans, cricket is an insect. It is not a game. So, somebody may have great talent in cricket, but if that game is not played there, what is it? It's an inhospitable place. So, if it's an inhospitable place, the solution is transferring. We have to go to a place which is more hospitable. No matter how well a person does gardening, no matter how good seeds are there, the soil itself is not fertile, we can't do much about it. Now, sometimes the person just may not have, if you consider the skills, say somebody may be doing incompatible, maybe having that they have incompatible skill set. The work they are doing is incompatible. That means if somebody is very good at music, they're not really good at gardening, and they try to garden, then it's not going to work. They have to at that time be transforming. Either I have to develop the skills, or I have to go to some place, go to some other job where I have the skills. So the seeds may be potent, but if the seeds require a hospitable soil, and if the soil is hospitable, but I don't have those seeds only, the seeds that grow over there, then either I have to get the seeds which grow over there, or I have to go where the seeds can grow. Okay, so sometimes we may not be appreciated because, so at that time we have to be transforming ourselves. Now sometimes it's this endeavor is what is required. Okay, I may the soil may be good, the seeds are there, but it's not that today I plant and tomorrow I'll have the roses. It may take sometimes months, years. So sometimes it may just be that our endeavor is insufficient. Then we need to be tolerating. So, okay, that means I'm working but I'm not getting the result. Let me wait, let me tolerate. Things will work in due course. So, this is, as I said, a philosophical concept. Even if you don't get the idea of how these 5 factors of action work together, the point I was making is this: tolerating, transforming, and transferring. These are 3 broad approaches we have, and all 3 can be done with a service attitude. So say somebody has hurt us, and we might decide, okay, this person is a good person, and they just have this particular behavioral work, or they particularly have this weakness. I will accept this, and I just move on with life. I'll not expect that maybe this thing they are not never going to improve. So I learn to live with it. That's already. Sometimes we may have to decide that the way this person is, I have to take a strong stand over here. I have to transform the situation. I have to tell them that this is not the way we can function together. This is what you have to do to change. So sometimes we may have to, like I talked about, we take some disciplinary action, we seek some punishment, transform the situation. Sometimes it may happen that the person who has hurt us is just too powerful, just too autocratic, just getting into dealing with that person is going to be a huge complication. And we decide that getting this person to justice is not the mission of my life. So we may decide that, okay, yeah, this person is a bad person, but this is not going to work for me. I don't want to spend my life in this. We might just move out of that person's kshetra voluntarily, make a proper plan and get out of that person's kshetra and continue our work in life. So in this way, bhakti, what the bhakti wisdom does for us is that it helps us. It first of all gives us a higher assurance that no matter how we have been hurt, we are still a part of Krishna's plan. And then it gives us a broader vision of how we can move ahead. So it's not just this is Krishna's plan and you have to follow it. No, there are multiple avenues within Krishna's plan. And we can see what works best for us and move ahead in our lives. So I'll summarize what we discussed today. I broadly discussed 3 points about, the whole point was we're trying to discuss responding to hurt. So we were trying to see how we can play our part in God's plan. So the first point I discussed was God's plan. It is not a thin line. It is more like a broad direction in which the Lord wants us to go. So what is the key characteristics of broad direction? We act in a way that make things better. And things better could be internally better, it could be externally better. we try to act in a way that helps us move upwards, move Godward, move towards making things better. So we shouldn't be like paralyzed with worry, thinking, oh, is this God's plan for me or not? We use our God-given intelligence and move on. Then we talk about the role of intelligence in surrender. That surrender has both aspects. That one is God's plan happens to us, then we accept it. God's plan is also meant to happen through us, and there we accept responsibility to change. So this example of surrender is Draupadi. The example of surrender is Arjuna. So both are parts of God's plan. Then we discussed that. So how do we go about dealing with the situation then? So first is, when we are trying to do God's plan, first we focus on transcending the situation. So transcending means basically recognizing that initially we feel, oh, this problem is so big, and what is God even doing for me? But eventually what happens is the world becomes small, and the problems become small, and God becomes bigger. So getting that perspective, when we do that, then what happens is we understand that Krishna is like the ultimate GPS, and we always have a part in Krishna's plan. So this gives us a deeper assurance. So by transcending, we get the assurance, that the reassurance that something is working. There is some plan of Krishna in this. And then after that, what is the second part? Tackling. Now tackling can be done in three ways. What are three ways? Tolerating. We discussed the Pandavas tolerating initially. Prabhupada tolerating in America. Then there is transforming. The same situation I can tolerate, I can change the situation. Or Prabhupada was fighting with Juhu for the land, what the Pandavas did with respect to the Kurukshetra war. And then transferring. We just move out of the situation, because we understand that this is not what I want to get involved in. Now all these three can be done resentfully, or they can be done negatively. Tolerating is not resenting. If we are not transcended first, then we will be not transforming, we will just be retaliating. We will not be transferring, we will be running away. So we don't want this. And then we discussed how these three relate with the three aspects of when we are tolerating, we are focusing on the cheshta. Okay, I have to do more endeavor till the results come out. When I am transforming, what we are doing is we are developing our karana. Okay, I need to develop the skill set by which I can act in the situation. And we are transferring, we are recognizing that this adhishtan, this place is not the right place for me, so I need to go to a different place. So through it all, we understand that whether we are transferring or transcending and tackling, we stay in Krishna conscious, knowing that Krishna can bring good even out of the bad. So the world can hurt us in many ways, but greater than the world's power to hurt. The world can hurt us in many ways, but greater than the world's power to hurt is Krishna's power to heal. And when you focus on that power, through even the darkest of situations, Krishna will guide us to eventually a place that is much better, internally and externally. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Are there any questions or comments? Yes, please.
Could you explain transferring, we are moving ourselves from the situation. So how is it not running away?
Okay. See, when we are running away, we are primarily conscious of how terrible the situation is. And that is the focus. When we are transferring, we are not, when we are running away, we are, you could say, situation conscious, problem conscious, trouble conscious. But when we are transferring, we are service conscious. We are Krishna conscious. But this is not the place where I can do my service. So therefore, I'll seek a different place where I can continue my service. Yes.
Thank you, Prabhuji. I was just seeing it from another perspective of, I think you were describing how we may be in situations where we are hurt or suffering and so on and so on, and how we should deal with it. And I was thinking of it in another way, is that if someone is accusing us of hurting them, and we may have done it, we may not have done it, that should we be trying to explain to them that we've not done it? Or should, particularly if we see it as that this person has already come to a conclusion, we already think that we're bad, we're wrong, we're constantly making mistakes, or should we say to them that, okay, I've made a small little mistake, but it's not consistent with everything else that I've been doing, you know? I'm consistently doing good, I'm trying to help you. I've made this one mistake, apparent mistake, and I'm being labelled as a bad person. Should we try and explain that to the person, or do we think that if they've already come to that conclusion, just move on?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good question. A good question is just a good way of saying I don't have an answer. Well, some things I would say. It's not easy when people label us in a particular way. My understanding is that it's a part of our service to have also good relationship with others. And if somebody has accused us, we could just be all defensive. No, I didn't do this. Why are they thinking like this about me? We could try to clear our good name with that in mind. But it could also be that if a person has a particular conception about me, then that's going to create tension in the relationship. That's going to vitiate the atmosphere. So let me try to, as a service, clarify things. So definitely, I would say initially, we have to try to transform in that particular thing. Try to help them. So it could be that, okay, maybe I had a mistake, I have made a mistake, and I am trying to learn and improve, I won't do this again. Or it could be that I want you to also, you have a particular conception, but let's talk about it and let's see if the conception can be resolved. Now, having said that, there will always be some people who will never see our way of looking at things. So, detachment means to respect others' right to be wrong. To respect others' right to be wrong. Now, we don't assume they are wrong and think I am right. That is the opposite of detachment. That would be like hyper attachment, self-righteousness. But if they have come to assessment which they are just not able to change, then we will tolerate it, live with it. Some people will never be satisfied with us. They will never appreciate us. I was once trying to do a mediation, and one person, they came very politely, and I can see that you are very angry with me. What have I done to make you so angry? Can you tell me? The second person said, you exist. Now, if somebody has an attitude like that, then what do I do? Just so that you don't be angry and stop existing. Now, the other person was saying that in a hateful sense. He said, it's just everything about you annoys me. The way you laugh, the way you talk, the sound of your voice. Now it sometimes just happens. Some people, just like we are attracted to some people without, you can't really give a logical point by point reason why I'm attracted towards you. And we may give a reason, but then somebody else could say, okay, those reasons apply to this person also. Why are you not attracted to this person? So to some extent, raga and dvesha are beyond our rational capacity to understand and explain. So sometimes it may be just like that some people will never be able to please them. Just live with it. But then, if that person is in a big position, and that person is out to make our life miserable, then we may decide, I can't be here if this person is propagating like this. I don't want to fight with them. This is your place. I just move out of that place. So all three options may be necessary to be considered in different contexts. Okay. Thank you. Yes, please.
The comment was, I was going to make a comment. I hope they weren't married.
Oh God. Oh yeah, definitely they were not. Yes.
Prabhuji, thank you so much. I was wondering if we are following God's path or God's plan and we are practicing devotional service, and what happens? What is the limitation for tolerance? I mean, how long can you be tolerant? Is there, like, it can be a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20, doesn't matter, it's very long. Then is it time to then transfer?
Yes, of course.
You know.
You see, again, the point of tolerating is not tolerating. The point is that, okay, this is an issue which I don't like, but there is something I like, or something is of value for me. So then, if what is of value for us doesn't remain of that much value, say if we have a job which we don't like, but it is paying us well, so there's no pleasure in the job, but there is something of value other than the money. Now, over a period of time, we may tolerate the unpleasantness of the job because the money is there. So for that particular point, the money is the big thing. But say over a period of several years, we have enough savings, we don't have so much financial insecurity at that time. Then you decide, is this money, is it worth this much inconvenience, this much trouble, this much headache? Maybe we decide it's not. So rather than focusing on the limits of tolerance, it's better to focus on what is the big thing and how we are able to pursue it.
Thank you, but also transferring can be quite a scary process sometimes.
No, so that's why I think, rather than focusing on these options first, because I want to serve Krishna. So how best can I serve Krishna? And if you keep that attitude first, dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mamapayanti te Krishna, I'll give you the intelligence. So none of these options will come without any flip side. When Prabhupada left India to come to America, in India he had both security and respect. As a sadhu, no sadhus, where Prabhupada was living in Vrindavan, it's a holy place, and sadhus will always get some food and some staying facility. And if Prabhupada would come to a place like Delhi or some other places, India is a pious country. Any well-to-do person will open their home to host a sadhu. Now Prabhupada didn't just want respect, Prabhupada wanted people who were dedicated, or at least interested to become dedicated followers. So, who were interested in becoming devotees, dedicated devotees. So then Prabhupada left India. And it was definitely a courageous thing to do at that age, when he has not even left the country of India once throughout his life. At the age of 69, 70, he is leaving to go to a completely different land. So yes, it was definitely a heroically courageous thing to do.
And there were many hurdles.
Yeah, that's it. His focus was not so much, I am running away from Vrindavan or I am running away from it. This is what I need to do for my service to the Lord. So if we stay service centered, then each side is positive and negative. We'll be able to evaluate more objectively.
So what about society or shame or things like that, the factors which may come or may not come, like the hurdles?
See, in general, Prabhupada talks about a devotee should be resourceful. Resourceful means it can be many different things, dakshya. But it is basically, we sometimes adjust our aspiration to our situation. Or sometimes we adjust our situation to our aspiration. So we have to decide what is more important for us when. This is something which I want to do, and in this situation I'm not able to do it. Then either I find something else which I can do in that situation, or I change the situation so that I can do it. So these are all important factors to consider. But my understanding would be that rather than focusing simply on transferring, especially I would say that the Western tendency is more to focus on changing things. Change the situation or fight against the situation. So that can go towards an extreme. The Eastern tendency is more towards tolerating. And that can also go towards an extreme, where a person becomes passive. So we need a balance where it's good to, if we have some friend or guide whom we can consult, it's good to write things down and pray to Krishna and deliberate and then make a decision. Thank you. Yes, please.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, could you give me some advice on how do I develop the attitude of surrender?
See, surrender has both an aspect of actions and an aspect of emotions. There are 6 elements of surrender. Accept what is favorable, avoid what is unfavorable. And then there are the emotions or disposition that Krishna is my protector, Krishna is my maintainer. So those 6 elements of surrender are given. So the disposition that comprises surrender will take time. The conviction that Krishna is our maintainer, Krishna is our protector, that will take some time to come. But what we can do is, in any situation that we are in, we can try to think what is favorable and what is unfavorable. So if you focus on that, then, generally we have our likes and dislikes. And we decide what to do or not to do based on those likes and dislikes. But if we consider, that's my likes and dislikes are there, but is there something more to consider? What is favorable for my Krishna Bhakti? What is favorable for my spiritual growth? What is favorable for my service to Krishna? And what is unfavorable? So if you just keep considering those things, that kind of consideration itself is a sign of surrender.
Thank you.
Just wondering, sometimes in a situation there's different ways how we can act. For example, you mentioned Srila Prabhupada fighting for the land in Chu, and probably many people would have given up in that situation. So we used to understand what's the right action to take. We contact Gurus and Shastra, but that can also give us different perspectives. So I'm wondering, is there a way how we can make sure we derive right lessons from it, and also which action we should take?
See, I don't think there's anything like a right lesson, because each one of us is a different individual. In describing the qualities of Brahmana and Kshatriyas, Krishna describes 2 opposite qualities. For example, for a Brahmana he says Kshama, forgiveness. But for a Kshatriya he says Yuddhe Chapya Palayana, not flinching from a confrontation, not fleeing from a confrontation. So different people have different dispositions. So sometimes, when you talk about shame or something like that, so sometimes you may have to decide, if there's a particular situation, if I try to change the situation, there's going to be a lot of complexity. If I don't try to change the situation, there's also going to be a lot of inconvenience. So we may have to decide what will be more difficult for me to live with. That I decide I try to fix this and I got myself caught in so much complexity and my mind will keep beating me up, why did I get involved? Or if I don't do something and then afterwards my inside me I feel beating, I can't live with myself. How could I stay? I was staying silent when all this was happening. So I don't think there is any right decision in the sense that what is right for one person may be different from what is right for another person. So it also depends on our disposition individually. So it's good to have, to consult if we have some devotees to talk with, if I have a spiritual guides, that's helpful. If not, we write down the various pros and cons of various factors and then get it written down carefully and then maybe write it on a physical paper put that paper on the altar in front of Krishna and pray to Krishna. Krishna, this is my intelligence, this is my thinking. Please guide me whether this is what you think also is right for me. And maybe we keep it there for for a few hours, for a day. Maybe during that time try to connect ourselves with Krishna. It's like this transcending and tackling. This isn't having just 1-2. It can be like a cyclic process. I transcend, then I tackle, and again I transcend. So then during that time we do some intense prayers, we do some intense devotional activities, try to open our heart to Krishna. And then we take that from the altar and then we reread again. See if we got some fresh insights, some fresh perspectives. And then we try to arrive at a decision. Okay? Last question.
You're giving an example in the transcending about a tall building and there's a man and there's a helicopter. I didn't quite understand the message in that.
Okay, so what I was saying is that, see, when we are not really Krishna conscious, for God is very small for us, then what happens is, oh, I am alone in this big bad world and this terrible person is hurting me so terribly. What am I going to do? So the whole situation seems to be overwhelmingly large and we seem to be powerlessly tiny for that situation. But when we connect with Krishna, when we practice bhakti, when we infuse ourselves with Krishna consciousness, then it is like we have risen above that situation. When Krishna becomes bigger for us, the problem starts becoming small. Okay, this is there, but I have to deal with it. Let me find out how best I can deal with it. Okay? So thank you very much. Shri Krishna Bhagwan ki, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. I pray that all of us, in whatever situations we may be, that we can gain deeper understanding of Krishna's love for us and acceptance of us in whatever situation we are, and we gain greater clarity about how we can move forward and upward through that situation toward Krishna in harmony with His plan for us. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Chaitanya Charan Prabhu ki jai. What a wonderful course. I wish it could be longer. I'm looking around, I can see so many people very reflective. And I was just about to say a similar prayer myself, but Prabhu said it so eloquently. In School of Bhakti, we try and, as volunteers, organize these events, courses, retreats, really just to share the wisdom from Srila Prabhupada's books. Facilitators are sharing the wisdom as it is and providing it in such a relevant, relatable way. And we just pray that everyone benefits in some way, shape or form and can share with others as well. So we have so many courses running. They're all on our website. There's many more to come.